Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Mariam Akhtar and I am from the Department of BS Chemistry. My ID is 004 and this is the course of Analytical Chemistry, which are presented to Sir Heather. And the topic that was assigned to me was of organic precipitate and precipitate equilibria, solubility product. So let me take a start with the presentation layer of my presentation. It will start from the precipitate, where I'm going to talk about is properties, organic precipitate, examples, organic analysis, process of precipitate, and precipitate colors. Then I'm going to talk about precipitate equilibria, means solubility product. Important terms before going toward the solubility product, then standard KSP, the nature of the precipitate equilibrium, and calculation of the KSP. Afterwards, I'm going to talk about the application and uses of the precipitate reactions, application of the solubility products. So, what are organic precipitate? Before moving toward the organic precipitate, we should know that what is precipitate. Precipitate is basically the process of conversion of chemical substance into solid form from the solution by converting the substance into the soluble, insoluble form or supersaturated solution. Precipitate is basically when the reaction occurs in a solution, the solid formation occurs, which is called as precipitate, and the chemical agent which causes the solid to form is known as precipitant. The example include it is the mixture, it is the mixing of the two clear solutions. The first one is the silver nitrate, and the second one is sodium chloride. The precipitate will form a silver chloride in the insoluble water. So this is the chemical equation in which we can see that. What are the properties of the precipitate and the precipitation reaction? The precipitation reaction undergo in an aqueous solution or medium in an ionic state. The reaction takes place between the ions present in the aqueous solution forming the product. The products formed at the end of the precipitation reaction are the precipitate, which are insoluble in the aqueous solution. Precipitate reactions are known as ionic reactions since the ion actively take part in the reaction and form the product. These reactions depend upon the temperature, concentration of the solution, and the buffer solution. What is chelation? A chelating agent is a substance whose molecule can form a several bond to a single metal ion by forming a ring structure. An example of chelating agent is ethylene diamine. A single molecule of the ethylene diamine can form two bonds with the transition elements such as nickel 2. Now, what are organic precipitate? These are also a large number of organic compounds that are very useful in precipitating the agent for metal. Some are very selective, and these are number of elements which will produce precipitate. Organic precipitate agents have the advantage of giving precipitate with a very low solubility in water. A chelating agent is a type of complexing agent that has two or more groups capable of complexing with a metal ion. These are basically the reagents, and these are the structures of the reagent. The first one, dimethyl glycoside, and the metal precipitate are as follows. These all are the reagent, these are the structure of the reagent, and these are the metal precipitate which are comes out after reacting the two reactants. On organic analysis, several organic functional group or heteroatom can be determined using precipitation method. This is the analyte, organic halide, and oxidation with nitric acid in the presence of silver, it is a treatment, and precipitate is silver nitride, and the precipitate is silver halide. These are the analyte. These all are the treatment with which it will be treated, and then we'll get our precipitant and precipitate. What are the precipitate colors? Many of these compounds can produce color with very different ways. Gold can give precipitate or black, chromium with deep green, cobalt, pink, copper, blue, and as follows. Will a precipitate form or not? It depends upon the Q and the KSP. In order to decide whether the precipitate will form when two solutions are mixed, we must first calculate the value of the Q, quotient reaction, Q is basically the measure of the relative amount of the product and the reactant present during a reaction at the particular point of the time. If the value of the Q exceeds the KSP value, a precipitate will form. And if the Q is less than KSP, precipitate will not form. And if both are equal, solution are at saturation. What is the process of precipitation? Precipitation reaction occur when the cation and anion of the aqueous solution combine to form an insoluble ionic solid called precipitate. The most important method for the precipitation is by displacement method taking place in a solution in which more active metal displaces inactive or less active metal. So, what are the precipitate equilibria and solubility product? So, precipitate equilibria and solubility product. Solubility equilibrium. Solubility refers to the ability of a substance to dissolve. In the study of the solubility equilibrium, we generally deal with the low solubility compounds. Low solubility compounds are classified as precipitate. Solubility equilibria. These are the short terms which we should ponder about: solubility product, precipitate, and solubility. Solubility product, it is the equilibrium constant representing the maximum amount of solid that can be dissolved in an aqueous solution. Precipitate is basically the solid that exists in a liquid phase of a solution. And solubility is basically the amount of substance that will dissolve in given amount of a solvent to give a saturated solution under specified condition. Solubility product constant is basically the equilibrium constant for the solid that dissolves in an aqueous solution. All the rules for determining the equilibrium constant are continued to apply. An equilibrium constant is the ratio of the concentration of the product of the reaction divided by the concentration of the reactant once the reaction has reached equilibrium. This is the KSP product of the silver chloride, and this shows the water insoluble precipitate of the silver chloride. Silver chloride is on its composition having cation, silver, and anion chloride. The equilibrium expression for the reaction is this. Because silver chloride is a solid, its concentration before and after the reaction is same. The equilibrium reaction can be written as follows. Solubility product constant formula. This is the KSP. This is the concentration of cation having coefficient A, having the exponent A, and this is the molar concentration of the anion having B as an exponent of power. KSP is the solubility product constant. It is the cation, it is the anion, and AB are the relative concentration of A and B. The examples are for the substance in which anion are not in 1:1. The stoichiometric coefficient of the reaction became the exponent for the anion in the solubility product expression. This is the lead chloride, and the KSP of the lead chloride equation are as follows. This is the barium phosphate, and the KSP will be like this. What are the table for the solubility product constant? Having solubility product of some common salt at 25 degrees Celsius are as follows. These are the salt and these are the ions of salt, and at 25 degrees Celsius the KSP value will be as follows. Solubility equilibria. Solubility equilibria is a type of the dynamic equilibrium. It exists when the chemical compound in the solid state is in chemical equilibrium with the solution of that compound. The solid may dissolve unchanged with dissociation or with chemical reaction. It is a temperature dependent and is of great significance. The nature of the solubility equilibria. Dissolution of the salt in water is a chemical process that is governed by the same laws of the chemical equilibria that apply to any other reaction. These include the topic of common ion effects, influence of the pH on the solubility, and supersaturation. The precipitation and the solubility product. Precipitation reaction occur when a cation and an anion in aqueous solution combine to form insoluble ionic solid, which is called precipitate. Whether or not the reaction can be determined by using solubility rule, because not all the aqueous reaction form precipitate. One must consult the solubility rules before determining the state of the product and writing a net ionic equation. So what are the factors that affect the solubility? Temperature, common ion effect, pH of the solution, and formation of the complex ion affects the solubility. And what is the effect of pH on the solubility? The solubility of many compounds depend upon the pH. For example, the anion in any sparingly soluble salt is the conjugate base of the weak acid that may become protonated in the solution. And how we can calculate the solubility product? So, at a certain temperature, the solubility of the ferrous oxide in the water is 7.7 into 10 raised to power minus 6 mole per liter. If the KSP can be calculated, it's based upon its equilibrium equation. So first we have to write its equilibrium equation. So we have written its, and this is the salt and this is the salt sulfide. And then we have to write its solubility product. This is the solubility product of this chemical equilibrium equation of the ferrous oxide. And then 1 mole of the dissolved ferrous oxide produces 1 mole of the ferrous and 2 moles of hydroxide ions. So therefore, solubility of the ferrous oxide is this. This is equal to the value of the change in X. So the next step will be, here we will replace the ions, cation and anion, with the X. So we will get with the molar 2 anion and 1 mole of cation, we replace it X and twice X with the squaring. And when we put the value of the X in it, we will get this, and afterwards we will get our solubility product constant. After that, this is the second example how we can calculate the solubility product. The dissociation equation or chemical equation is like this. Then we have to write the solubility expression, KSP expression, and then we have to exchange it with the S. In the previous example, we have exchanged it with the X, and here we are exchanging the moles with the S. So it will become 4sp. Then we will put the value of the KSP in it, and then we will get our KSP. What are the uses of the solubility product? It can predict the precipitate. Solubility products are useful in predicting whether the precipitate will form under specified condition. It selects the condition. It is also helpful in choosing the condition. It determines basically the solubility of the product is the number of substance having been experimentally determined and can be used to predict the solubility at specified temperature. Now, what are the application of the precipitation reaction? Precipitation reaction helps in determining a particular element which are present in a given solution. These reactions also monitor the formation of the precipitate when some chemical is added to a solution. These are used for the extraction of manganese. In human body, it also encounters these reactions existing between the antigens and antibodies. What are the examples of the precipitation reaction in our daily life? It's occur in the wastewater treatment, it's occur in paints and dyes, toxic chemicals, separation of reaction product, presence of heavy metal be found as a compound of sulfide and hydroxide. So we can add a source of hydroxide that can soluble sodium hydroxide or sodium sulfide, which result in precipitation reaction. So thanks, that's all from my side.